Give us a minute, please. Okay, there we go. This is our schedule for today, and we'll have individual questions and a general Q&A at the end. So yeah. Before starting, please mute yourself during the presentation and put your questions in the comments section. We'll try to read out as many as possible. And if you have technical issues, please feel free to message our co-hosts. Yeah, we will begin. I'll stop sharing.
All right, yeah, thank you so much for that introduction, Joyce. I'm going to be sharing my screen and hopefully it's going to be working. Can everyone see my screen? Alrighty, so hi everyone, as Joyce mentioned, my name is Daniel and I'm going to be heading to the University of Waterloo for their Computing and Financial Management program, which is a joint program between the David R. Sheraton School of Computer Science, as well as the Faculty of School of Accounting and Financial Management at the University of Waterloo. So this is just a little bit about me. I just want to introduce myself to everyone watching. So I am an IB program graduate from Semiahmoo Secondary, and I feel really passionate about combining the worlds of technology and business together in order to create a better and create a societal impact that will hopefully change the lives of as many people as I can around the world. And as I mentioned before, I'm going to be entering the Faculty of Math, which is the larger department of the David Sheraton School of Computer Science at the University of Waterloo, as well as the School of Accounting and Finance, which is in the Faculty of Arts of Waterloo. And I have a couple of hobbies. I like reading a lot. I've been reading a lot since the summer break started. I also like coding, and most of all, I like spending time with my friends and family as much as possible. Yeah, so here are some of my high school academics. So as I mentioned before, I took the IB diploma program, which for those who don't know, it's a 2-year program that is an internationally renowned program that is hosted in a couple of schools around Surrey and Vancouver. And if you're watching from somewhere else, I'm sure there's a couple of IB schools near you. So the courses I took personally in my course load was HL Physics. I also took, in which I won the top IB Physics Award at my school. I also took HL Math and HL Chemistry, and both of those kind of helped me gear towards this STEM field of my education. I also took SL French, which is, and I also won the top IB French student in this subject as well. And I also took English Literature SL and History SL. So just to give a little bit more context, the HL stands for higher level in IB. So you're taking more of the accelerated within courses within the program. So I took all of mine in STEM related courses because I thought it would be relevant. And I would say overall, IB is a great program, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone who's trying to take an academic challenge. It certainly can be challenging at times, but I feel like it prepares you with the necessary skills as well as the academic side of things before you enter university. And I know a lot of my peers who are striving to apply to prestigious programs within Canada or to American schools or to schools in the United Kingdom. They thought it wouldn't be possible unless they took IB, because nowadays the academic rigor is something that universities are really looking for. So I feel like it really prepares you for that, and it gives you more of a competitive edge, which is a great service. I think as long as you are able to you want to challenge yourself, I feel like it's a great program. And if anyone has any questions about IB or tips on IB, feel free to ask me at the end of my presentation. So, and here are some of my high school activities that I did in school. So these are not outside of school activities. So first and foremost, I was the president of my school's Model United Nations Club. Model United Nations, for those who don't know, is a debate slash foreign policy club in which we discuss global issues. We have some discourse between peers, and it's quite a large community, especially in the Lower Mainland and in Vancouver. So that was a huge part of my high school career. Um, I also was a senior executive at my school's Globalizers Club, which is our school service club. We launch a bunch of fundraisers and campaigns throughout the year. And some of our campaigns that we've done is raise over 500 food cans and over $500 for a local food bank. We've been hosting fundraisers to help send students in Kenya to achieve their post-secondary education dreams and other components like that. And I am also a senior executive at my school's science club, which I am currently presenting in the science club's webinar. I believe their final webinar of the academic school year. So that is another thing that I've been actively
这都是你
participating.
学校毕业的学生，现在上了名校。
And I'm also the team leader of one of the subgroups within my school's UBC Physics Olympics team, in which we won third place at the 41st annual UBC Physics Olympics. It's an Olympiad in which a bunch of different schools across the Lower Mainland come in, compete in different events. And as you can see in the bottom right, I know it's not the clearest of photos, but that is a photo of some of our team members. And I was an active leader and participant in that, and I was a contributing member to the team. And these are just some of the examples of some of the initiatives I took during high school. And I'm more than happy to elaborate on any of them if anyone has any questions. And see, here are some of my outside of school activities. So these are things that I did outside of my school community. First and foremost, I'm an alumni of the SHAD Canada program, which is one of Canada's premier STEM and entrepreneurship programs that take place over the summer of one of the academic school years. So I believe if you are a grade 10 or a grade 11, you can apply to have SHAD, partake in SHAD at a university for, I believe, a month, in which you learn STEM and entrepreneurship concepts, and then you combine the two in which you create a project. So for my group personally, we created a project which was investigating fluid dynamics and microgravity in order to reduce semiconductor deficiencies in the hopes of reducing e-waste so that we can all have a more sustainable method of delivering technology. Another thing that I did, which was a really big part of my academic career in the last 2 years, was the Science World Future Science Leaders program. So this is a STEM enrichment program that goes on over the course of the school year. And I took my specialization in engineering, and I was able to explore some different facets in engineering. I got to learn from experts. I got to learn from people that went to CERN, MIT, Cambridge, and just a bunch of experts. It's like a mentorship program. And it was honestly a great experience in which I learned so much. I got to go to Science World several times throughout the year. They give you opportunities for jobs, volunteering, and so many other things. And it's a great program that I would love for if anyone's interested. Once again, feel free to put something in the chat. And here's some of the more volunteering aspects I've done. I have taught STEM concepts and coding to younger students as a junior instructor at the University of British Columbia's Gearing Up summer camps. So I was able to work full-time shifts during the summer for a couple of weeks in order to teach STEM and coding to some of the younger students that were partaking in that summer camp. So I was like a camp counselor, camp instructor. And I've also done Taekwondo, which I have done for around 10 years now. So I'm a 3rd degree black belt, and it's been a huge part of my way of staying healthy and having academic balance between athletics and academics and other commitments. And I've been have the privilege to be invited to events to perform across the Lower Mainland. I've also performed internationally and competed on some international stages, such as in Canada and the United States. And last but not least, I am an alumni of the Encounters with Canada program, which is a program which in which you spend a week in Ottawa in order to learn. For me, I took it in science and technology, but if you are interested in anything else, such as law or a certain subject or area, there multitude of different options that were available for the students. And once again, feel free to ask any questions about these programs at the end, because they are all amazing. And I honestly feel like without any one of them, I wouldn't be the person I am today. So yeah. And here are some of the universities I applied to. So as you can see at the top, the school which I'm going to, and I also put on the right-hand side there, if you can see the different programs I applied to. So at the University of Waterloo, I applied to several because I had the option to, because I wasn't exactly sure what my intended major would be. So I applied to the Computing and Financial Management program, which is a program which accepts around 40 students every year out of over 1,000 applicants. And I also applied to computer engineering, which is a larger program, and it's also very well renowned within the University of Waterloo. And I also applied for the computer science program at the University of Waterloo. And at the University of Toronto, I applied for computer engineering. McGill, I applied to computer science and computer engineering. At the University of British Columbia, I applied to the Faculty of Applied Science, and I also applied to some American universities. I was accepted into all of my Canadian schools in which I applied to that you see on the screen here. So if you have any questions about the application process, I know that we have some speakers later on that will be discussing a little bit more about these. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask once again. And I just kind of wanted to give a little bit of brief application advice. So first and foremost, I would say most of all, you have to keep a track of deadlines, opening dates, and other of those logistical aspects, because honestly, in grade 12, when you're applying to university, if there's any rising seniors up here in this webinar, it's going to get really hectic with academics, and then you have to apply for universities, you have to look for scholarships, you still have to continue extracurriculars. For those in IB or AP, you're going to be very, very busy in comparison to your other years. So that is something that I really do suggest. Make a calendar for yourself, write them down, put a sticky note on your wall, or just ask some friends to help keep track with you. Like, I honestly feel like that's really helpful as well. So if you know when the deadlines are, but even more importantly than the deadlines, I would say it's the opening dates, because you want to get as much of a head start as possible to have that time to really prepare and write and really think through what you want to write in your applications. And I think that another great thing, and something that I did, and I wish I kind of did more of, was apply them for more than one option if possible. So what I mean by that is, if your school allows you to apply for more than one program or more than one major, I would highly, highly recommend doing that, especially if you feel like you are interested in something else. So the reason why I chose the Computing and Financial Management program was it combined my interest in the humanities, aka the arts/finance and business, as well as my primary interest in STEM and computer science. So I feel like that really had a really graceful merging between the two. So that's why I chose it. But if you have more options, like I would say go for it, because you never know. When I entered grade 12, I was 100% sure I wanted to go into STEM. Later down the line, I realized I kind of wanted to combine some humanities into my major. So definitely try to look into that and see, maybe apply to, if you think you have a little bit of an interest in economics or arts or English or anything at all, just put it down in your applications. Most universities will kindly and welcome applying to more than one major. So that's great. And I would say this number 3 is really, really important. Start the writing process early and give yourself time to really think through what you're trying to write. It's really self-explanatory, but it's surprising. Sometimes it's really hard to keep track of what's going on in life. And when things start to pile up, I would say it's not a great habit to working on the deadline of. So I would say that most of all, start the writing process early, start thinking about your essay, start brainstorming. And even if you have some free time over the summer, try to maybe start writing for some of your essays, especially if you're applying to some American universities, in which I know that it's a lot more of a stressful process, because you need to come up with a couple of drafts. Each university has more writing supplements and everything. So that's an important thing. Number 4, believe in yourself. I would say that a lot of kids feel like, oh, especially when applications come around, you feel like, oh, my grades aren't high enough compared to other kids that are applying to the same program. Oh, there's so many amazing people. You can really feel that pressure of maybe, oh, I'm not good enough. Oh, my resume isn't as good enough. I haven't done enough extracurriculars. But I would say that I feel like I experienced that, and I feel like a lot of other of my peers experience that as well. And you're not alone. Trust me, I'm sure that most people are experiencing that around you, but it's really important for you to believe in yourself, have confidence. And if you want to achieve something, if you want to apply to a really competitive program, just do it. Apply, take risks. There's no harm in applying, because the worst that can happen is you are unable to enter the program, but you'll find a different fit that's even better for you. So I feel like everything has a reason, and you should just believe in yourself, because you never know what can happen. And last but not least, don't forget scholarships. So I am the recipient of the BC Excellence Scholarship, which is a $5,000 scholarship, and a couple of other supplemental scholarships, whether it's from the university or just some other ones. So you should always try to apply to as many scholarships as possible. Once again, you may feel like, oh, pressured, or you won't be able to receive a certain scholarship. Don't worry. A lot of other people may think that, and a lot of these ones actually don't have that many applicants. So just go researching. There's so many resources. Reach out to your school counselor, and all of them will work out. So last but not least, I am going to try to give some advice on how to make a decision. So I would say the first and foremost, what impacted my decision was, what exactly do I value? So some things that you may consider is, do you want to go to an academic, prestigious and rigorous program, or do you want to have a little bit more of that college experience? Do you want academic flexibility, something that's easy to change your major, something where you can maybe transfer into a different major if you feel like you're not able to, so like more of a liberal arts type of environment? Or you can, another key factor, and this is something that really resonated with me when I was applying to Waterloo, is that in participating in Waterloo, I'm part of the co-op program. So in 5 years of schooling, I get 2 years of work experience, and it's kind of spread out across the 5 years. And I also know that U of T, SFU, and even I believe UBC have co-op programs, especially for their applied sciences. So that is some great options, and it will. I'm sure I haven't had the opportunity to do it yet, but having a co-op and looking for a job afterwards is so important. Next one is location. So location can be a really big deal. It's going to be where you're going to be living for the next 4 or 5 or even 6, 7, 8 years. Like you never know what's going to happen. So you want to consider, oh, do I want to live in the big city, or do you want to live in a little smaller town that's close to a bigger city? East Coast versus West Coast. How do I fit with the weather and everything? I know a lot of people who want to go to Ontario are kind of scared about the weather. So these are all things that you want to consider. It's going to be your home for the next, like I said, 4 to 5 years. So it's something you really want to consider. I personally like being close to a big city, but not necessarily living in one. So that kind of influenced my decision on going to Waterloo. And next of all, I think you want to consider on, how does the university support your goals? It doesn't matter the ranking of the school or the ranking in a specific subject. I think most of all, will it help you prepare for what you would like? Does it give you the academic flexibility and the academic freedom to explore what you want to do? And does it support your goals? Perhaps you want to pursue further education, like a master's or a PhD, or go to grad school, med school. So some schools are more academic focused, and some are more focused on preparing you for the workforce. So for me, I kind of want that nice blend of preparing for the workforce, but then a lot of the, if I do want to pursue a further education, I know that a lot of the grad schools require some work experience before you apply. So that's something that impacted my decision when I was applying to Waterloo. And last but not least, I would say scholarships and finances. It's relatively self-explanatory, but you can always consider that as well. And I would say what I'm doing now, and just some advice I would like to impart at the end of my presentation, is I would say try to find something that's relevant to your work, to your what you're trying to apply for. So whether it's work experience, summer programs, opportunities, researching with a professor, something like that can really boost your application and increase your chances of getting in. So create a theme. So for me, I would say I created a theme revolving around STEM, revolving around my curiosity and combining STEM and finance and business together. And that was my theme. so that I can hopefully create a greater societal impact. And that was kind of the theme I revolved my whole application process around when I applied to each and every school. And I think that having that focus in mind will really give you some clarity, as well as a admission officer that's reading your application. They know what you're like, they know what you want to accomplish, and having that theme that you've built, whether it's through your opportunity, your extracurriculars, in-school activities, and academic courses that you take, like all of those things are super, super important. And if you can't find any opportunities over the summer or during the school year, that's okay. Look for hard skills like coding, learning a language, and working on your essay, or preparing for exams or previewing. Like all of these things are just some things I can do over the summer. It doesn't have to be every day. It can be a couple of times a week, but I would say setting a schedule for yourself and setting goals for yourself is super, super key. And last but not least, just look ahead for scholarships and don't be afraid to reach out for help. Like everyone that's joined this webinar, I know that you guys have joined in because you want to learn more. So that's already a great start. And don't be afraid to reach out to teachers, counselors, older senior peers, like myself and anyone else that is presenting here today. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to my presentation. I know I went a little bit over time, but if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them. And yeah. I believe that I can stop sharing. As if there's any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. If it's relevant to Waterloo, any of the other schools, the application process, IB, any of the extracurriculars, I am more than happy to answer them. Or if you don't have any now, there's always the group panel at the end.
Okay, if there aren't any questions, then Xavier, oh, there are now, actually. Ruby asks, how did you begin the scholarship application process?
Yeah, so I would say that that's definitely something that I wish I actually kind of did a little bit more of. I would say that most schools will compile a list of scholarships and their due dates. So I know that my school, we had a scholarship package, and that was something that really helped me out. It helped me keep track of some of the ones I looked out for, but also like a lot of it, you kind of have to search for yourself. I know that there's websites such as Scholarships Canada that kind of gives you a bunch of them, and you can create an account. I believe it's free, so it can really help you prepare. And there's also some other ones such as like GrantMe. I know I've never used it myself, but I know it's helpful and it can help a lot of people. But yeah, just I would say like you have to do research in advance, because as everyone knows, when the school year comes around, you're not going to have that much free time to like research. So I would say researching now and just hearing from your seniors and hearing about opportunities would be a great place to start.
Carol Yuan asked, did you take part in any coding competition?
Yeah, so I believe I actually haven't had the opportunity of partaking in any coding competitions. I took the University of Waterloo requires that you take the Euclid or the Canadian Senior Mathematics Competition, which is both are pretty well-renowned mathematics exams, but I actually didn't take any place in any coding competitions. But I would really recommend it because I feel like it's such a great way to get started and learn coding. Even if you haven't, I heard that it's so inviting, and like hackathons and stuff, like go out there, challenge yourself, and yeah.
Kelly Jean asks, how do you balance your extracurricular and academic?
Yeah, so I feel like it's different for everyone. What works for me may not work for everyone, but I would say that making a schedule for yourself and realizing what you want to do and what you don't want to do. So when I got a little bit busier, I kind of had to move away from some activities just to make sure that everything is balanced. But like recognizing what you want to do and just making sure you stay on top of that. But even more so, especially when you're in IB, AP, or even if you're just in none of those programs, I would say it's like use your time in a productive manner as much as possible. Because to be honest, I had to dedicate a lot of my time towards other things, because while I was in IB, I also took an AP course. I had extracurriculars like almost every weekday. So it was definitely difficult. But once you kind of make a schedule for yourself, and when you dedicate like maybe 3-4 hours for homework and studying every day, and just trying to be as productive as possible, and of course taking breaks is so important. But trying to really balance and make a schedule for yourself, and then no one's asking you to study for the entire day, or no one's asking you to do an extracurricular for the entire day. It's just, how are you using that time, and how much energy and focus are you devoting to it?
Because we're running a little bit late, we'll have Xavier presenting next, and we'll answer the other questions in the general Q&A.
Yeah, and thank you so much everyone for listening.
Thank you.
Be happy to answer the remaining questions at the end.
All right, I'm just gonna share my screen. Can you see it all right? Okay. Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Xavier Lam, and I'm currently in grade 12, about to graduate from Point Grey Secondary Mini School. And next year I will be attending UBC for engineering. So about me, in my free time, I like to explore artificial intelligence. I also play piano and saxophone, and occasionally watch anime. So about my high school experience. Since the start of high school, I've been leading towards a career in engineering, and I've always had a great appreciation for technology and computers, as well as a passion for creating things. So as I mentioned, I'm in the Point Grey Mini School, which is a enriched program where I share most of my classes with a cohort of the same 30 students. The program also offers really fun trips every year. For example, we went to Bamfield to study marine biology, and we've been to Ashland, Oregon, where we were able to watch Shakespeare plays in a Globe Theater replica. And every year we also have trips to Anvil Island as well as Manning Park for skiing. So these were the grade 12 level courses that I took, along with 2 AP courses that were 2 out of the 3 that my school had offered. I also took Leadership 12, which was a mandatory mini school course. And most of the other courses are pretty standard for going into engineering. Our school actually used to have a lot more AP courses, but by the time I got to grade 12, AP Calculus and Computer Science were the only courses offered. But I really do recommend taking AP courses, as even if you don't use the credits for university, they're still really beneficial in terms of knowledge. And I actually enjoyed those 2 courses a lot. So my extracurricular activities. Giving back to my community has always been important for me. For the past 3 years, I've been volunteering as a junior instructor at UBC Gearing Up summer camps and weekly programs. So I was helping out in the camps and teaching kids STEM concepts. I really recommend volunteering with them if you don't mind little kids and are interested in STEM. In the past, I've also volunteered at my local library, helping kids to improve their reading skills as a reading buddy. I've also coached basketball at my local community center and tutored kids at an after-school math club. And I've also achieved my Duke of Edinburgh Bronze Award, which is like a volunteering and like award for extracurriculars. I was also part of the Future Science Leaders, or FSL program. I would say it was one of the most transformative programs for me. I've been through all 3 years of the program, and I have to say I've gained so much practical science skills. I also wrote lots of blog posts, and I've learned how to read and write scientific research papers. I would say the highlight of the program was working on personal projects. In my first project, I created a maintenance-free gutter design, which I 3D modeled and prototyped. And last year, I developed a deep learning algorithm in Python using convolutional neural networks to help classify and detect skin cancer from an image. This project was really personal for me, as I have someone close to me who has passed away from skin cancer. Working with accomplished and supportive mentors was really one of the most inspiring and beneficial parts of this program. And I highly recommend this to any students who are interested in STEM to apply for FSL. I was also part of SHAD, which, as Daniel also covered, is a Canada-wide STEM and entrepreneurship program that's offered in the summer. And usually SHAD takes place at a university campus. However, I participated in SHAD 2020, which was online. Some of the highlights of the program were meeting a lot of diverse people from across Canada and working in my design team to create a spaceflight payload experiment, which actually we placed in the top 5 teams in the program. Overall, I would really recommend the program to everyone, and I think anyone could take away something valuable from it. Additionally, this year at my school, I decided to form a new club called the Engineering Club. After attending all the programs that I previously mentioned, like SHAD and FSL, I wanted to create something similar to offer a similar experience to those programs at my school. I really wanted to also bolster the student involvement in STEM, which I felt was lacking at the time, and also get students exposed to things that they might not learn in class. So each week we do different activities like 3D printing or soldering, and we also host speaker events from engineers across different disciplines. Music is another one of my passions. I've played piano for over 10 years, and I'm currently working on my RCM level 10 piano. I'm also actively involved in my school's music department, and I've been in both concert and jazz bands since grade 8, and I've played bass clarinet and tenor saxophone. I really love the expressiveness of jazz and the improvisational skills and confidence that you can gain from performing on stage. I would really recommend this, like music or artistic or creative passions, to anyone. Also, I've tried many sports, but the one I've stuck with longest is fencing. So I've fenced for over 10 years and I've competed at provincial and national levels. I really enjoyed fencing because it's a mix of strategy and athleticism. At school, I've also competed in shot put at discus on my track and field team. And overall, I really just recommend getting involved with some kind of sport or exercise, as it really helps you clear your mind and also develop discipline that translates to all aspects of life. So for the application process for universities. So for university, I applied to most of the major Canadian universities for engineering on both the West and East Coast. In terms of criteria, I looked mostly for universities that had strong engineering programs and research reputations. And since I was nominated for the Schulich Scholarship, I wanted to apply to a broader range of engineering schools. And in the end, I was lucky enough to receive a scholarship at one of my top choices. So some advice for writing essays and interviews would be to talk about your passions and what they mean to you. Show your qualities and involvement by telling your unique story. And talk about how your experiences have changed you and how they'll shape your future. And overall, just be true to yourself. So after your applications are done, you'll be having to wait for a decision, which can be pretty nerve-wracking. Your friends might get into a school before you do, but just remember it's all right. And a lot of decisions can come out later on, so don't worry about early admissions and try not to stress about it too much. So in the end, I chose to attend UBC despite getting offers from other top schools, as it's not only one of the top engineering schools in Canada, but also very convenient, as I would be able to stay home and save money as well. So I was extremely fortunate to be nominated by my school and win the Schulich Leaders Scholarship worth $100,000 to study engineering at UBC. So the scholarship will allow me to pursue my passions and personal projects, as well as help me eventually create a startup in the future. Additionally, the Schulich Leaders Network will allow me to connect with other Schulich leaders from across Canada. I was also a recipient of the BC Excellence Award, worth $5,000, and it is given to 50 students around BC who show dedication to their career. So these scholarships were actually the only two I had applied for, but some advice would be to look into as many scholarships as you can. University can be expensive, especially if you're living in residence. So scholarships can make a big difference. Also, you don't always need to be the top student to win scholarships. I would say most scholarships are looking for people who are just driven and passionate about what they do. So a final word of advice would be for students interested in STEM, I highly recommend that you just learn and try as many different things as possible, whether it's coding or art or even astronomy. Just find something that excites you and pursue it. For me, that was machine learning. Get involved in your community and give back to others. Find a mentor who can guide you through your studies and career and life, and it will help immensely. Most importantly, follow your passions and stay true to yourself. Thank you. So I'll take some questions now, if you guys have any. Okay, so tips for receiving the BC Excellence or Schulich scholarships. I would say make sure you have something that makes you stand out, and be a leader, and don't be afraid to talk about something you really care about and are passionate about. Where did you perform with your instruments? I performed mostly at my school concerts, and we also toured places. I think there was a music festival in Whistler that we played at, which was pretty fun. Experience with AP classes. So AP Calculus was actually, funnily enough, like one of my favorite courses for some weird reason. But it was all right. It was challenging, but also fun at the same time if you like math. So yeah, I would recommend taking it over normal calculus, and it will really prepare you for university math, I would say.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then thank you, Xavier. And we will have Sana next.
All right,
When you're ready,
thank you.
Sana.
Hi guys, can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So my name is Sana, and I just graduated from Semiahmoo Secondary from the IB program, and I'll be talking about applications specifically for health and life sciences or biology specific programs at different schools in Canada. So a little bit about me. I already mentioned where I graduated from. I did the full IB diploma, and I would say in terms of my interests, they're actually quite equally split between the sciences and the arts. My first passion ever, like when I started high school, was science. And I think I was really focused on pursuing that, especially when I got to a level where I was competing at the National Science Fair with my projects. But funnily enough, when I got into like the highest level of science competitions, the judges would ask like half of the questions about the science of your project, and the other half was about like how applicable is your project and how would it work in the real world. And that's what inspired me to look more into like real life applications and industrial applications of science, which led me into my interest in the arts. I'm sure like with the pandemic, we've all kind of seen the importance of having that intersectionality, because politicians are not scientists, and scientists, while they do know like how to handle things, they don't necessarily know the logistics of implementing everything. So that's how I kind of got interested in the other side, or the other side. And the two things that really piqued my interest were journalism and international affairs. So fun fact about me, I actually grew up in 5 different countries in Asia, Africa, and North America. And that's why I'm particularly interested in international affairs. So having said that, that's one of the main reasons why I decided to do IB once I got into grade 10, because, it's the International Baccalaureate. Daniel already explained how it helps with like international consciousness, and it is standardized around the world. Before I moved to my IB school, I was really looking for a community where the students were driven and focused. And so that's something that IB offers as well, which is a super, it's like a really good benefit, especially in your last 2 years of high school. So my courses were higher level biology, higher level chemistry, and then higher level English, where I won the top student for that. And standard level history, top student, math, and French. So I put a star next to math because I think it's like a heads up. I took higher level math my first year, and while I did enjoy it and math was one of my favorite courses, I felt like it wasn't necessarily one of my strongest courses, and my grade was okay, but it took too much time, which interrupted with like the balance of my other courses. And that's just something I wish I knew earlier, or more of my peers knew earlier, especially for Canadian high schools, is that depending on the high school that you're applying to, the first thing that they look at is your grades. So you really need to recognize what is your priority and understand what will kind of make the best like profile for you. If you have a really poor score in a course, it's not going to make or break you, but you really want to be like an ideal individual, because there are, so many other students who have like almost identical academic profiles as you. So instead of trying to force yourself to like take a specific course because it looks really good, do what you think you're good at and what you will stand out in. And as you can see, like when I switched out of higher level math, I took higher level English, and I ended up winning the top student award in that course. So I just want to it's like a warning or a heads up for high school students to be flexible. Obviously complete your prerequisites, but work smart, not hard. Yeah, so a little bit about IB. When I was first joining IB, I feel like a lot of people only had like really good things to say about it, but there's another side to it as well. I'm actually a tutor, and I tutor kids in both high school and elementary school. And a question that I get often is my kid good for IB, or should I do IB? Because kids who go through IB and they complete it, obviously they're only going to talk about their good experience, but it's not a good fit for everybody. So the pros is like, it's a really good community. Like I said, everyone is super motivated and very driven, which I feel like if there are times where it gets hard, and it does really get hard, you have everyone else around you working on it or going through the same thing. And so you never quite lose your ambition, and you're always like inspired by your friends around you. And even Daniel mentioned like, try to keep like deadlines, or spread the pressure with your friends, because when you're going through it as a group, it's much better. It teaches you discipline, in terms of stress management, time management, and it's a head start, obviously, in that sense, because university is like a completely different world from high school. And one thing that I really enjoyed that a lot of my friends didn't tell me about going into IB is that there are so many opportunities to explore your interests, because you have like independent research projects, and it can go very like, you can go very thoroughly and deep into your topic of interest. For me, I did one of my papers in biofuels, and that really like even pushed me forwards into understanding the importance of the arts and science in terms of like industrial application. The cons is something that I want to talk about as well. So the first thing being that IB can be a restrictive program. That being said, or even like AP courses, I feel like they can be restrictive because there isn't like always a big selection. So if you're somebody who's super interested in like math and physics, but let's say you don't think like arts is your strongest knack, or you don't think you'll perform very well, maybe IB isn't for you, because IB's goal is to make you well-rounded academically, but for some people that kind of sets them back. That's what makes it a risk, because I have a couple of friends from different schools who decided to do IB because they thought it makes them look really good for universities, which is true. But or you're not at a competitive level in your class, it doesn't put you in a good light for university applications. I'm not saying this to scare students away, but at the end of the day, I do have like a handful of friends who didn't get into some schools as like their friends who took like specific AP courses or just the general curriculum. So I think, again, like be really smart about that and don't feel like you have to fit a mold. And the other thing that shocked me about IB, or didn't shock me, but I didn't necessarily anticipate it, is that it really makes you prioritize what you do with your time, because the course is super intensive. So if you're someone who's always like allocated a lot of your time to extracurriculars, I remember in my first year of IB, after school, I would do extracurriculars until like night, like 9 or 10 p.m. And then I'd come home and then save that time for studying. And it was okay for me back then because I was really passionate about my involvement in things outside of school. But in grade 12, you do have to cut down a lot of things just because you need to understand your priorities. And with Canadian schools, pretty much all Canadian schools look at your grades first. It's a little bit different for schools elsewhere. And then there are a couple that also look at your extracurriculars, but you really need to prioritize making sure that your academic profile is at a competitive level. So I want to talk a little bit about my extracurriculars. So I did a bunch of things at different like levels of involvement. I'll start with my favorite, which is Model UN, which I've been involved in for like 3 to 4 years. It's been very consistent. And I started out by just attending conferences to being staff and secretariat for day conferences and hotel conferences that host like up to 500 to 600 students, and starting my own conferences as well and getting government grants to run those. I think it's really important to show like commitment and consistency in your extracurriculars, because again, like one of the things that I did was I talked to a couple of students in universities who helped with admission processes. And something that they wanted to point out to students applying is don't feel like you have to do certain extracurriculars, because we all know ones like playing a sport and doing debate, or like, I don't know, being in a Med Hopeful Club at your school. That's like the cookie cutter perfect like student for someone who's applying to health or life sciences. But if that's like the cookie cutter template, then there's a lot of students with that profile. And so what admissions processes or like admissions officials have started to look at is they want to see like, you know, what makes you stand out and what does this extracurricular say about your character? If you're attending Model UN conferences, what does it really say about you? You want to show that, you know, I'm a leader because I'm like in the organizational level of these conferences. I'm not just a participator anymore. I've worked on journalism with 2 different projects. One is Project Understated, where a group of friends and I would interview essential service workers for the past like almost 2 years, and we'd write articles about their experiences. People who aren't necessarily highlighted in our communities, like custodians or small business owners. And then Ponte Muse, which was it was a small initiative that was started in our school. That was local. I tutor as a part-time job for different levels. And another thing that students in university told me about in terms of the admissions process is there's some kids who feel like, oh, because they have to have a part-time job or they work at like a cafe or a restaurant, they don't have as much time for extracurriculars. That puts them behind like students who do things like debate or science programs or whatnot. It's actually something that admissions officials like really value because it shows that you're taking responsibility. You're potentially supporting your family or yourself. And so that definitely does count if you have a part-time job, and it speaks more to your character. I did SHAD, which the past two presenters already explained, so I won't go too much over it. I did international organizations. I've listed my two main ones here, but basically we hosted these projects or webinars with countries such as Uganda or like places like Luxembourg and whatnot, just to try bridge a gap between like student cultures around the world. And I was also the co-president of my school's Med Hopeful Club. So again, as you can see, even though I applied to only life sciences and health sciences, my extracurriculars are not like science focused, and that's okay. Because again, you think there's a mold, you think all you have to do has to be like science or engineering programs, but it goes to how your extracurriculars speak to yourself. I like to think of university applications as kind of an elevator pitch. And so how are you going to make yourself stand out, and how are you going to present your character? Be yourself. That's what everybody says. And for me, I decided instead of doing a bunch of science things, if I'm interested in the arts and there's a story behind everything as to why I'm interested in it, I didn't limit myself in terms of the fields of involvement. And honestly, it worked out just fine. And I'd say it helped me stand out against other like science-focused students. Not that it's a bad thing, but don't let it limit you. So here are the universities that I applied to. And as you can see, for each one, I applied to either health sciences or life sciences, and I was really lucky to get accepted into all of them. I'd say when you're applying to universities, obviously there's like the main things such as have a schedule ready, keep track of things. But for me, like one of the things that I want to point out that the other speakers didn't get to brush on was reach out. I remember when I started my application process, I was super intimidated because I didn't have an older sibling or too many older friends who could guide me through the process. And when you read about universities online, sure, like each university is going to say that, we offer these things, we stand out against the other schools, but think about how you have to be there for the next 4 or even more years of your life, and how that's going to, how are you going to fit into that environment? So what I did was I was lucky enough to come across an organization called Pump Professionals, where they have like a mentorship program. You tell them what you want to study and what schools you're interested in, and they will pair you up with a university student who's in their second or third year there. And I had so many conversations with students, and that was really helpful. I think that's like one of the main things that influenced my decision, because I was able to actually talk to someone about their experience. I want to say that like when I first started out, I thought, I want prestige. I want to get into like the #1 school in Canada. But again, you have to recognize yourself. So talking to those students, the thing with prestigious schools, like they're really big, or like student culture isn't as big, or the support systems aren't as like well established as, let's say, smaller schools. And those are things that you never see on the websites. So I think it's like great to talk about students about those things, and you have a better sense of what life is going to be like, because like education quality across Canada is pretty good, and it's almost equal. So think about your life as well, because you need to be healthy in like your social life and mentally in order to strive academically as well. I put Discord servers because if you actually look into it or you talk to some of your friends, each like field in terms of like engineering or health sciences or arts, there's like a bunch of organized servers where students talk about their application process, they share deadlines, scholarships, and I think that's really helpful to be in a community of other kids your age, and it helps you ease the stress a little bit and the imposter syndrome that you might be experiencing during like the waiting time, thinking if you're good or not. And then finally making your decision. Um, so I wanted to talk a little bit about like the essay process because I felt like I wrote so many essays, but it's so vague when like people try to give you advice. They say just know yourself or be yourself. I think on top of that, understand what the university or the program is looking for. So some schools like U of T are much more academic oriented. So try to highlight your academic accomplishments if you do have to write an essay for them. Some schools like McMaster's health program, academics is only like, half of it, but they have a supplementary application process and that gets scored. I thought, okay, time to show off my extracurriculars, but they asked me questions about my character, like, what do you think is like one of your biggest weaknesses and how are you going to fix that? And, it kind of puts you on the spot, but you have to understand that that program that I was applying to is for problem solvers. So don't try to show off like, I have all these accomplishments or this is my grade average, but show that you are like conscious of your character and how you're actively working on it. And that makes you like much more impressive because your own words speak more than your stats. And then finally, I decided to choose UBC. And these are like the three main reasons for me. The first one being declaring my major. So I did say like I was interested in both the sciences and the arts. And I felt like some of the other programs I had to go straight into science, or I had to commit to like a double major. But at UBC, you actually study for 2 years until you can declare your major and you can declare your double major or like a major and a minor. So I thought that was a good fit for me because there will be a diversity of courses that I'll be able to sample. Another thing that made me choose like a bigger school over a smaller school, again, while talking to students, I heard that some had experiences where they decided or they found their new passions as they studied certain topics in more detail. And when they tried to transfer, the same resources were not offered there. So I didn't want to be limited. But that's really up to you. Do you want to take a focused approach or are you like me and you feel like you're interested in like a broad range of things and you still need some time to refine what your specific goal is? The second biggest reason was community for me. I mean, obviously I already live in BC, so that was really convenient, but I've been super involved in this community, both in terms of like journalism, volunteering for like my local political groups and whatnot. And I felt like if I stay, I get a chance to continue working in these networks, and that opens more opportunities for me compared to like some opportunities as someone who's like completely new in a new environment in the other side of the country. And then lastly was their master in management program, where students can take any degree that they want, whether it be applied sciences or sciences, arts. And then Sauder School of Business at UBC offers this, where while you're taking whatever course or whatever degree you've set as your main, you take a couple of credits from their business school. And then at the end of the degree, you do 6 months to a year of intensive business courses, so you can graduate with a master in management. And I thought that was a really good opportunity where I can look at both sides and get like a practical business like education as well. Yeah, so that's the end for me. I'll take any questions now.
Hi, Santa. I just asked a question. Do you think AP courses are required for Canadian universities?
When I went into when I started going into high school, I thought you do need to have AP courses to get into the most prestigious like universities in Canada or maybe the US. And while I do agree that they can give your academic profile a really good like boost or benefit, because it shows that you do well in like an academically rigorous environment, I don't think it's necessary because I have a handful of friends who actually stuck through regular curriculum for like their entire like high school career, but they still got into like the exact same schools as I did, and they got into like the top ranked schools in Canada, like U of T or UBC and McGill. And I think like that's something I wanted to emphasize throughout my presentation is that like there's more than one way to get to where you need to. And if you don't feel like you're a good fit for like the standard academic profile, focus on your strengths, whether that be in or out of school. So I don't think it's necessary.
All right, thank you. The next question is, did you take any APs?
No, I personally didn't take any APs. I just focused on IB classes. I see another question about my extracurricular and academic in terms of balancing. I think like time management, even though that's super vague, is really important. And for me, especially in the last year of high school, when you have to deal with university and scholarship applications, it can kind of seem like a burden to have these extra responsibilities. But I think it definitely helps if the extracurriculars that you have are something that you're really interested in, and also if they're community oriented, because I actually felt that I had a more balanced life with my extracurriculars versus if I had taken out the extracurriculars and replaced it with more time to like rest, because they gave me like another avenue to forget about like academic pressure for a while and work on my personal interests. So for me personally, I kept a lot of my extracurriculars even when things got really busy because they help me balance stress and interests like mentally.
Okay, if there are no more questions, then we can move to our last speaker, Alyssa. Thank you, Santa.
All right, okay, let me share my screen. Hold on. Oh yeah. Okay, there it is. All right. Okay. Okay, so hello everyone. So I am Alyssa, and today I'll be talking about Queen's Commerce and also a gap year since I am taking a gap year this year. And so make sure to stay until the end. Okay, so I also took the IB diploma program, and some of the hobbies I have that I recently started because IB kind of prevented me to do some of these are dancing. And I recently actually started going to the gym more regularly. And oh, the middle picture where I am skiing, that's called biathlon. So essentially what you do is you ski cross country. So you ski up hills and down hills. And also after you ski, you take a rifle and then you shoot targets. And then I did that during IB before the pandemic as one of my extracurricular. And another thing I love to do is definitely traveling. So in grade 10, I actually solo traveled to Ottawa, like booked everything by myself and was just there and visited a bunch of museums. Okay. Okay, so first of all, let's talk about my extracurriculars. But before we start, I want to remind you to not compare yourself to me because I am not like an example of like what you should and should not do and should participate in. I'm just like giving you my experiences, so definitely don't compare yourself to me. Okay, so I am going to highlight 4 of the key extracurricular activities I did. So basically I did public speaking a lot, especially like competitive public speaking. So for initially, I actually really enjoyed it, but then later on I moved on to like non-competitive speaking, like TEDx speaking and organizing TEDx events. So that is what I did. And secondly, I am also an ARCT pianist. And during my spare time, I usually help teach piano or music theory. And also just basically, I really enjoy teaching because, of course, music is something I'm also very passionate about. And the two other ones is the TEDx event that I led. And we actually went through a lot of ups and downs through this event, especially initially we planned to host it offline. But then the pandemic hit, so everything was super uncertain and we couldn't use the school facilities at all. Because of the pandemic and district restrictions. So we really had to navigate out of that situation, such as how are we going to raise funds if we cannot charge entrance fees anymore? And how are we going to continue like speaker trainings? But eventually we pulled through and we were able to host this event last year in October. So this is definitely one of the bigger projects that I did. And the last one is the Air Cadets. So I was actually in it for since grade 7 and continued it until now. And in it, I actually like contributed in the forms of teaching lessons because I don't know why, but I really enjoy like working with younger people. And other than that, I also won some cadet scholarships, such as like the Gliders Pilot Scholarship, and also the Advanced Aerospace Corps Scholarship. But then the Glider Scholarship was canceled due to the pandemic, so that was really unfortunate. And I also competed nationally in biathlon, so the skiing and shooting sport that I told you about. Yeah, and that was pretty fun. So from these activities, you can actually tell that I participated more, I was more actively engaged outside of school instead of like in school clubs. So I just want to tell you that that is absolutely okay as well. Just find what really works for you and what really doesn't really work for you. And if you want to start some initiative by yourself, just try to not be afraid to do so, and you can break out of the mode of like just participating in school clubs and actually maybe participate in more outside events if that works for you. Okay, so some of my high school courses. So as you know, I did IB, and very ironically, I didn't really know what to do. So I used to think that like STEM, because right now there's a really large push for like STEM degrees and STEM related courses. So then I used to think that maybe STEM would be like the best path that I take because it is slightly more respected in the community, I'd say. So I thought maybe like I should be more involved with STEM instead of humanities. So I just enrolled myself into a lot of STEM related courses like math and like physics and also chemistry, like science. But later I realized maybe that's not where my interest lies. And so that's why I also applied to like Queen's Commerce and Garden. So I just like to say that before you really go with like what everyone else is going, you should actually reflect on what you are actually want to do. And maybe you don't know at the time, but that's okay as well. And eventually you might actually like get a feel for everything and decide which area you are more interested in. So in terms of IB, I'd just like to say, yeah, it's a program that I don't regret taking. But also I did not really think about it before going into it. So I didn't really have a goal in mind because that was what everyone else was really doing. And basically me as a very ambitious student also wanted to kind of get myself more involved in more academic things. But after much reflection, it actually made me realize at the time I was actually not being too true to myself, although I don't regret going through the program. So whether you're looking to take like APs or IBs, I just want you to like think about it, really think about it. Are you motivated externally, or are you motivated internally to go through the program? Or like, are you just doing it because everyone else is going into it? So yeah, that's my general thinking for in terms of academics. Okay, next in line is some business schools in Canada. And depending on what you look at, like the ranking, some might say like UBC or other like U of T is the best business school in Canada, but many others say like Queen's and Ivy, like Western University, are the best business school in Canada. But after I asked a lot of people, like a lot of locals as well, they agree that like Queen's and Ivy are more reputable, but that actually depends on what ranking you look at. But yeah, so I compared these two business schools, and why I decided to commit to Queen's was because in Queen's, you get access to the upper years network earlier, like in first year. So you get immediately enrolled in Smith, the Queen's Business School. Whereas in Ivy, you really had to like, I believe you gotta compete for it, and then you enroll into their Ivy Business School in third year or fourth year. So I thought that Queen's might be a better option for me. And also, if you look at the admission rate, it might seem very like minimal, especially like 6%. Actually, they admit 12% and 6% enrolled. And whereas IB also accepts around 8.5%, but they were kind of secretive about their admission percentage. Yeah, so if you're looking to apply to these schools, just don't be intimidated by the percentage, because as long as you really have this ambition to like get into these two like business school, I believe you can definitely, it's definitely possible. So, and then the rest of these business school, I also considered applying to Roadman, which is the U of T business school. But then after some thought, I thought U of T, since it's a very academically competitive school, I did not really want that environment anymore after IB. So I wanted more time to like network and to like experience with any of my hobbies. So that's why I chose Queen's. Okay. Okay, so some of the application process is just, this is specific to Queen. So it's very general. It's like award and distinctions and any kind of extracurricular activities or any full or part-time paid employment you had or unpaid employment. So that's basically volunteer or anything else. So as long as you have like a few volunteer activities, I think that is good, instead of having a lot of volunteer activities where you overextend yourself and then just burn out. So as you can like get from my experience, I only participated in activities that I truly care about, instead of like, I tried other activities, but it didn't work out for me. So I think that that would also work if you're looking to just focus on a few activities. And also some essays. Basically, this essay question can change annually. And since Sana already gave you guys some tips, I would just skip this part. Oh, okay. So next up is how I selected my university. So I got admitted to these universities and I believe another one, but I forgot. But yeah, I was very anxious and applied to a lot of university. But I also had like peers who only applied to like 3 or 4 university and got admitted to all of them. So I'd say I kind of overextended myself on this part because I was really anxious. But then, so I applied to some university that I was not really interested in at all. So on second thought though, like if I am not interested in it, why would I ever apply to it? But at the time I was just really overwhelmed. So definitely if you have some university in mind, I suggest that you actually like think about how many university you actually intend to apply, that when you get accepted, you actually intend to go instead of just applying to a lot of university. Other stuff that I wrote down was I made a list of what I wanted out of universities and what I really did not want. So this is a list over here, like finance wise or like environmental wise, and also the student network wise. So that's how I decided. And also going into Discord and talking to fellow students. And the general advice on that is just make sure to communicate with like other students who are already in the university that you are interested in going, because while university advertise like, oh, we are so glad that you are congratulations and like all those very kind of glad messages, in reality you really want to do your research, because while like university might be like so glad to accept you, that's like their marketing strategy. So you also want to like actually get a feel of it before you commit. So that's my general advice on that. Okay, so next we're going to talk about gap year. So why I finally decided to take a gap year, I actually hesitated for a long time because I was like, okay, everyone's going. Like, what if I actually like fall behind in my education or anything like that? So I was really, really scared to like make this decision, but I went to a lot of like gap year seminars as well, but it took me a long time to make this decision. But eventually, you know that I take IB, and due to COVID, we lost about like 60 hours of instruction in like math specifically, according to our teacher. So we were like literally rushing through a lot of material, so which led to a lot of burnout for me. So I was like, I know that if I go to university right after high school, I wouldn't be able to like concentrate fully in my studies. So basically, instead of like falling behind, I basically like kind of like waste a year just in university. Also, I am also not sure what to do because while we are in school for like the most of our lives, we actually didn't have a lot of time to like go outside to actually experience the world. Sure, you might have like extracurriculars, but I feel like we just actually didn't have enough time to see what's out there before we decide to make a very important decision that might cost us like thousands of dollars to go to university. And basically I want to like kind of get the direction before I commit. And also I talked about this before, but I think like STEM was more like respected, at least my personal opinion, in like my community. So I really convinced myself, okay, STEM is what I must do to be able to succeed in life. But like later I did a bunch of reflection. I was like, no, that's like literally not how it works. And I was really not being true to myself. So that's why I also wanted to take a gap year to reflect. And another thing is I really want to travel because, yeah, I talk about going to Ottawa in grade 10 by myself in the summer. And that was really like eye-opening for me. So I still wanted to go out and explore what's out there. Okay, so limiting beliefs that I really held. So like first one is gap year is only for academically motivated students. So I held this for a very long time and saw gap year as like the stereotypical break and basically kind of like lazy year. But later I also connected to a lot of gap year students, and there were ones that also finished IB that were taking a gap year. There were ones that are going to Ivy League schools that also decided to take gap year. So I was like, maybe that's not really what I thought this gap year would be. So that's why I decided to take a gap year, because that kind of broke my stereotype. And another thing is this, I will fall behind and suffer the existence ending shame of being a year older in university. But after what, like a bunch of reflection and communication to students, other students told me that in university, basically in the upper years, you can see a lot of mature students. So students that maybe like older than the status quo where they're expected to like go to university, and everyone just go their separate ways. And that kind of just like gave me courage to make this decision as well. And another thing is like, I will no longer have the potential to be successful. I don't know where I got this from, but it was like really limiting to me. So eventually I just threw that out the window. And the fourth one is, what if I never return to uni? So actually like, if I know I want to return to uni, then I can put a little faith in myself that I will actually return to uni. Another way to ensure that you actually return to uni is that you can apply to university already in your year, grade 12 year, and then you apply for deferral. So your spot gets guaranteed. So it's held until a year after where you decide to like go back to uni. And also like, yeah, what if I fall behind and lose my academic momentum? And actually, after thinking for a while, like what exactly are you falling behind of? Is it just the status quo? Is it just something that you constructed in your mind? You're actually not falling behind, I'd say. You are actually like moving forward, maybe being slingshotted forward, because in the gap year, I heard like people gain a lot of very valuable experience and mature more. And lastly, I have some sources where you can find resources, which are the Gap Year Association and Gap Yearly, which is an organization founded by students and with a lot of connection where you can like connect to other gap year students if you're considering this option. And also other resources such as like finance and gap year ideas, experiences, life after gap year. You can also find those information on these websites. So yeah, so if you have any questions, feel free to contact me or like put it in the chat if we're not too behind. Okay, cool. Oh, hello, Dave. Okay, so I see a question in the chat. And to answer this question is, yes, I applied to Queens, but I'm still waiting on the decision. But otherwise, I actually committed to more universities, such as I committed to UBC and Queens in actuality, because in case my deferral got rejected. So that's like a backup. But my deferral, I'm still waiting on them, and they said they will like approve it, like notify me in August or sometimes after my grades are in. So yeah. Oh, okay. So how I started teaching piano. So basically, what I did was I always kind of wanted to like earn some extra money, right? But when I was grade 8, I was like too young to actually like work anywhere. I applied to a lot of like restaurants, but I got rejected, or they were like, oh my gosh, you're too young, so we're not gonna accept you. So I was like, okay, why don't I actually do something that can build my personal brand, also get more experience interacting with like other people instead of just like working in like a company. So that's how I really started. And also I had actually grade 10 students, one grade 10 students as my theory teacher, who was actually, I felt like taught me better than my piano teacher, because they understood like how learning theory as a student is really like, whereas one of my piano teacher was really teaching more advanced steps and skipping over a lot of things, so I felt very uncomfortable in that situation. So that they were like, she was the one who inspired me to actually like teach. And then basically I started, it's just like I posted an ad in WeChat and some people were like contacting me. So it's not like too hard to start as long as you have the courage to actually start. What extracurriculars did you list on your personal profile for UBC? Okay, so what I listed was my piano teaching, my TEDx organizing, and biathlon, and actually, believe it or not, like traveling. Like I love traveling, kind of. So those are the activities that I listed, and also piano.
Okay, if there are no more questions, personal questions for Alyssa, then we can begin our general questions. So feel free to ask them in the chat. So Carol Yan says, sorry, I'm looking for the question. Okay, what suggestions do you have for her son to better start secondary school? Do you recall the process you developed from that point to this stage of your life from a seventh grader, I believe?
For me, if I want to, I'll start us off. I would say something that I would kind of advise to my younger self is have a goal. It doesn't need to be something amazing. It doesn't need to be something huge. It doesn't mean you go like, oh, I want to go into grade 8 and get 100% in all my classes. Like nothing like that. I mean, just 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, maybe will I look back at this time and be happy with what I accomplished in grade 8, grade 9, grade 10. And I would say the most important thing in grade 8 is to really explore. Join clubs. That's something I feel like I didn't do enough of in grade 8. I started most of my clubs in grade 9. And just explore, like learn, find your passion. I found that I wanted to go into STEM after doing grade 8. So that's something I would really say. But like most of all, find something you're passionate about and then make a goal. Because I feel like starting earlier is so much better than starting in grade 11 or grade 12 and go like, now I really want to go into this university and go into this program, but I feel like I don't have enough of the qualifications for it. But like also like don't doubt yourself either, and just enjoy grade 8. I would say enjoying high school, especially in the earlier years, is something that we can all agree is really important. So yeah.
I also wanted to share that if he's not sure about goals, or if like any students aren't sure about goals, like if I could go back, I would tell myself to get involved sooner than later, because what I found in my earlier years is in terms of university applications, you're probably not going to put down what you did in grade 8 or 9. But the thing that does have a lasting impact is the networks that you become a part of, because it starts with volunteering small. I wouldn't say I was a very ambitious student when I started out. I just like volunteered at like the local YMCA, but through that I met people who introduced me to different opportunities, and through those other opportunities I got like introduced to like even higher things that I never thought I would be interested in, or like never thought that I would be good at. And I guess like through being involved with people and not only trying to like take advantage of what they can offer, but making sure you leave an impression on them. You can like build a good relationship with a mentor, which is not only important to like guide you once you get going into like grade 10, like your senior years of high school, but it can be really useful for like a reference for applications in the future.
Xavier, would you like to add on to the question or answers?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, I would agree with what Daniel and Sana said. Mostly just try to get involved in as many different things as you can and see like what kind of things that he likes to do, or just find like get involved in different communities where you can meet different people who can introduce you to things. And yeah, just don't be afraid to ask around and get involved in different things, basically.
Oh, okay. Last thing. Okay, so in grade 8, thinking back, I was actually a little bit like unfamiliar with grade 8 back then, and then I was like having trouble like putting myself out there. So I'd say like while grade 8 is like basically the start of high school, you want to like maybe be very diligent in your schoolwork. Also give yourself some like leeway and give yourself some room to adjust instead of like pushing yourself too hard. And just know that grade, it's like a path, like a learning path, and then just don't like be too hard on yourself, basically. Because once you're in grade 11 or grade 12 applying to university, you won't really like put anything you did in grade 8, like Daniel said, on any application. So it's okay to like be a little kind to yourself while like being diligent, like know your balance.
Our next question is for Sana, but I guess it applies for everyone. What extracurriculars did you list on your personal profile for UBC?
So I think UBC gives you up to 5 extracurriculars, and off the top of my head, I listed Model UN, but specifically one conference because it was Canada's first ever like free of charge Model UN conference that a friend and I both started, and it was like completely funded by the government. And I wanted to put that in because for one of my essay responses, I commented on nepotism and how there's like limitations for students in terms of like competitive fields going against students from private schools. It's not anything bad, but there's definitely like, you know, some students can't afford to have tutors, some students can't afford to go to conferences. So that's something I was passionate about, and I focused on that. Another thing that I put on was SHAD, tutoring as my part-time job. Project Understated, which was the journalism project for overlooked essential service workers in our community. And lastly, I think I put in being the co-president of my school's Med Hopeful Club, because I wanted to show that while like I am involved in like national or international like extracurriculars, at the same time I paid attention to like my local community or like my school community's needs as well.
Any other inputs for this question? Or can
For me, I would say like everything that I mentioned earlier. I know I definitely couldn't include everything. I think the ones I couldn't include, I believe I kind of just thought like which the most to me and which 5 I guess were most recognized. And the ones I wasn't able to include, I kind of like wove into my essays a little bit more. Like I didn't like explicitly mention them, but I sometimes name drop them. I talked about how it shaped me. And a lot of the questions, to be honest, they kind of allow you to talk about your experiences. Like I remember for RE, where it was, what would your friends or family describe you as? So then I talked about like 3 or 4 different extracurriculars and how these people made me into the mosaic of experiences that I was today, and like how these people from that I met from these experiences really made me to the person I am.
Okay, we'll move on to the next question. Can you share how to write the essay of application? And I think we'll go from the alphabetic order. So Alyssa first.
So essay application. I'm still reading the question. I think didn't a lot of panelists already like gave tips on how to write the essay. So I'll just say something that I did was I revised my essay a couple of times after writing it. It's just like it's very general, like your extracurriculars and everything, like volunteer hours and school involvement and some like academic awards if you have them. But otherwise, like after you write it, it's a good idea to give it to like someone else to read it, because sometimes when others read it, they can tell you like which part makes more sense, which part is not very like, it's very colloquial, or if you made like, some kind of very casual mistakes, and any kind of feedback like, does this make sense what you're doing? Are you emphasizing like the importance of what you did enough, or was it just, did it just came off like a very normal thing you did, or like a thing that most people do, and that didn't help you stand out, or like any other kind of advice they can give. Otherwise, when writing an essay, I recommend you can revise it a couple of times after writing it for feedback, but I suggest you don't like over revise it, because once if you over revise it, then maybe like your work is not like that authentic anymore. And just make sure that your content is what you want to express, instead of like getting like too much feedback and becoming what like someone else's piece of idea. So when writing, yeah, so that's like generally my advice. And I can't really like show you. I'm not sure how I can show you how to write an essay, because an essay is like a very personal thing. And also I think we gave a lot of like tips on how to write it. So like that's my response. Yeah.
Any additions to this question?
I think the next thing, just adding on to what Alyssa says, make a theme for yourself. Like the admission officers will know what your academic life is like. So there's no real point talking about academics in your essays. I think the essays are a chance for you to show something that is not shown in your resume. So if you want to talk about compassion, or if you want to talk about your desire to work for social change, if you want to talk about your interest for something else that you haven't really had the opportunity, like that's where you really go into it. You show qualities that aren't really visible firsthand, and then build a theme around it. So for me, it was creating a social difference through technology, uniting people through technology, and something like that. And that was my theme. And I think that that's something that I really wanted to show.
I also have like something to add. This isn't anything specific, but it's an experience with these essays. So over the year, I actually had a friend, or like a couple of friends, who were applying to, I think it was Dartmouth University, and you have to write your own personal profile, but then you given a reference who writes an essay for you, commenting on your character. And personally, like I wasn't applying to that school, but I was asked by a friend to write that essay. And I think that was a really eye-opening experience for me because you're the person who knows yourself best, but sometimes you might know yourself a little too well, or things that you focus on might distract you from some of your other qualities. And you can't necessarily like get people to write it or copy like people's answers of what they think about you, but maybe before like the application process starts, you can like do like a project with a friend where you guys switch like a question about a character and have them write a mini essay about you. Because when I would write that mini essay for my friend or my two friends, when I gave it to them afterwards and submitted it to the university, some of the qualities that I thought were the most prominent about them were like their best assets wasn't something that they had focused on, and it really shed light on like a different aspect of their character and made them more well-rounded versus like the theme that they were like trying to push forward and maybe ignoring some of their other qualities. So not necessarily something that works for every application, but it was an interesting experience for me at least.
And lastly, Xavier.
I would say all the other speakers summed it up pretty well. I would say just a general advice to start early when you're writing essays, because you always want to leave time to revise them and go back. And when you're writing about like extracurriculars, instead of just like listing your extracurriculars, make sure to show how your extracurriculars kind of tell a story about yourself and how they show your character traits through your actions.
Thank you. Our next question is from Kelly. She is a grade 10 moving to grade 11, seeking future in health science. She asked, would anyone recommend some STEM research programs?
I know that Xavier and Daniel mentioned FSL, so Future Science Leaders, which is a really good program. And then I also wanted to pitch in the Knowledge Society, or TKS. I'm not sure if people here are familiar with it, but basically they've got like branches. I'm not sure internationally, but in North America, in the US and in Canada. And they have like their Vancouver branch, and it's like it guides the students quite well into some more advanced science topics and like focuses on like making the students like natural leaders or being able to like work in a team and be like proactive. And there's a lot of not only understanding how to read like research papers or like higher level concepts, but they focus on like practical skills like CAD design and reaching out to professionals in whichever industry that you're interested in. And a lot of my peers who did that program said that it was something that was very fulfilling and it pushed them a lot. And as a result, they like made all of these connections that helped them later on.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm not too versed in the health science world, but you know, I think especially if you want to do something that's more humanitarian related, it doesn't need to be a STEM program. Some other good STEM programs I could recommend is SHAD, like we've all talked about. And then Gearing Up is another one. I know STEM Fellowship is another one. I believe something that I wish I could have partaken in is TKS. But then like, yeah, like you don't need to do STEM programs to get into STEM, if that makes sense. It's helpful, but for example, like you can do something humanitarian related. There's something like the Vimy Prize, which is where you go to Europe for a summer and then you get to be an ambassador for World War One and talk about stuff like that. And it's you showing that you're well-rounded and you have a humanitarian awareness for global issues is, I think, something that's really valuable even within STEM. And then there's also American universities and Canadian universities. They offer a whole lot of opportunities like summer research at their school, summer programs at their school. So that's I know a lot of peers have done that and they really liked it.
Okay. Oh, Daniel, we have a question from before. Would you please show us your application average scores for Waterloo Double?
Yeah, so when I applied, which was the beginning of grade 12, so it was usually with my grade 11 marks. Um, for me, I would say that the average computer science, I'm not sure for IB, most computer science majors get in with a 95% average or more. I would say at least to be competitive, that is the usual mark. I applied personally with a 45 in IB. I don't know exactly how that translates in the percentages, but like, yeah, but once again, marks don't tell the entire story. So I would say like averages don't really matter as much as how are you making these averages be a part of your application instead of the only thing. I would say, yeah, Canadian schools do look at your marks first, which is something I believe someone else said. But once again, marks don't tell the whole story. I know people with 90% averages getting into programs that have a 95% average for the TINs. So yeah.
Okay, next question for the speakers that did SHAD. How much did SHAD help you with your applications?
I can take this one. So yeah, I would say SHAD did help quite a bit. I would actually say that SHAD helped me start a club at my school, which is another big thing that I talked about on my applications. So, and it also gave me a lot of different skills and opportunities to network with different connections that kind of go beyond these applications that are really beneficial. So yeah, I would say it was a great program.
Yeah, and adding on to that, oh, sorry, Sana, you can go first.
Sure. I think like aside from what Xavier shared, a lot of our mentors in SHAD were students that had completed SHAD firstly, and then who are also still studying in university. And I felt like that was really important for me when I was reaching out because I was like well acquainted with these students, and because they knew me. If you're really close to them, they could write a reference about you since they worked with you like every day for a little over a month. But you could also ask them about, their experience at school, which, as everyone has agreed already, is really helpful to get an understanding of the environment and culture of what's not shared online.
Yeah, and just to sum it all up, I think the best part about SHAD for me was that you get to make something in STEAM. It doesn't have to even be necessarily STEM. It can also have some artistic aspects of it as well. But you learn how to like market that in a sense. You learn how to really connect a real life issue and then make a solution with it. And to be honest, in school, it's like, oh, I want to solve a certain test question. I want to learn how to solve this type of problem. But these programs like FSL and SHAD, they teach you, you start with a problem that isn't academic really, it's like a social issue or it's a global issue. And how do we address that using the knowledge that we know? And what do we have to learn to get there? So I feel like that was the best aspect for it for me.
Thank you. And the next question, what are something about applying to universities that you wish you would have known earlier? This is for everyone. So I guess from Melissa first.
Okay, so let me think about it. I think it's just like I didn't really need to apply like to like 15 universities because like that was actually like crazy that because I attended a lot of like uni seminars and they were like, okay, you should apply to like 5 like minimum 3 reach schools, 3 like okay schools, and 3 like safeties. And then that was just like so much. And then at the beginning of the year, after I sent in my OUAC thing, which is like an Ontario common app where you can like pay all the application fees for universities, a counselor actually walked into our classroom and was like, a lot of students at SEMI apply to like 10 universities, but there's actually no need to apply to that many because you can only go to one university, right? Regardless of how many you apply. And although you have like so many choices, you also basically know like a certain amount of university that you probably like do not really want to attend, although you applied anyways. But so what they like the school counselor recommended was like 5 to 6 uni max. And then I thought that that was actually makes more sense than like overwhelming yourself, because if you like overwhelm yourself, you're not going to pay so much attention to the university that you actually want to like attend, and like maybe so that will influence your application essays or anything you want to send in. So that's why like after applying to so many university, I actually learned the lesson the hard way to actually like not overextend yourself. And also applying to university actually costs more than I realized. So that's definitely something you want to consider and research, because I believe for OUAC, the Ontario University application, like one application like to one single program in one university is 50, but some university has like more fees, like application fees for that specific university. For example, U of T charges like 150 more in addition to the 50 that you want to like apply for a program. So when you apply to like so many universities, that's gonna cost you like a fortune basically. But if you still decide to do that, then I mean, go ahead, and that's your decision. But if it's me, I would apply to less university than just like crazy amount of universities. Yeah.
Yeah, and now that Alyssa has covered some of the logistical things, I think something that I wish I knew is when before I applied to universities is, you know, like be ambitious, like take risks, you know, like challenge yourself and really step outside your comfort zone and just go like have a goal in mind, you know, like something that I think a lot of people that we weren't that I've talked to, and something that we all wish we had was, you know, have a concrete goal in mind. And maybe and I would say for me, as I go into university and after I graduate, I realized that as I was graduating high school, it's like in my next 4 to 5 years at university, I want to make sure that I have a goal in mind. I want to, for example, whether it's working at a certain company or it's going to a specific grad school, it's still applicable in high school, I would say. And really having like, oh yeah, this is what I want to accomplish. And then researching what you will have to do to get there, I would say is the number one step. And I think that's the biggest step that someone can take. And you can always change your mind, because once you have that foundation goal in mind, that ambition won't go anywhere except for translating just to a different thing, if that makes sense.
Sana?
I think like kind of extending on what Alyssa said, be focused, because when I think like something that I really liked during Alyssa's presentation was towards the end, she had a table. It was like what she wants and what she doesn't want in each category. And I think that's really good, because when I applied to universities, I didn't apply to like 10. I think I did like 5 maybe. And I had like my top 2 choices. But the problem is like every time I get accepted into one of them, I would like, you know, my mind would highlight all the good things. And it came to a point where even though I started out with, yes, this is my top choice, because I didn't really sit down with myself and make a list of my priorities, my mind was all over the place. I was like, oh, I really like the small and strong like supports like system at Queen's, but oh, I really like how UBC and U of T are really large and they have like a diverse range of courses. I really like how McMaster's has like a super selective program and they're really focused. And then I found myself like running to like every single corner between the schools, even though I did have like a top choice school. So I think like really understand what your priorities are. And if that means you have to sit down and make a table, then so be it. I had a friend who made an Excel sheet and he rated like every aspect like out of 5 and made like a total score. So sometimes if you look at certain factors one by one, it might be hard because you're like, oh, this is good, but this other thing is also good. And this is not that great, but it's how important is it? So, you know, if you're someone who works well with like numbers and thinking logistically, you can try that out as well. So that was one of the challenges that I had. I wish I'd worked on it before I started applying.
And finally, Xavier.
Yeah, I think everyone else pretty much covered everything there is. If I were to say one thing, I would just say don't stress too much about it. Do your research on your schools, but wherever you get in or end up going, I would say it doesn't matter as much as what you want to do and what you're passionate about. Because as long as you're driven to do something, I think you can keep going forward and be successful.
Thank you. And our next question, I think these two are pretty similar. What kind of jobs should I do well in school? Part-time jobs specifically.
I would say I didn't work while I was in high school. So I would say it's quite difficult to find a job that is relevant to your major. I know a lot of kids who have, but it's pretty difficult. So a lot of the time, like most people, if they do seek employment, it's tutoring, teaching a certain instrument, working at a local grocery mart. Like all of those things are great. And I think that that has so much value in and of itself. But I think another way to approach things, and this is how I approach it, so I'm only speaking from my experience, but find organizations and programs that don't pay you, but pay you in experience, if that makes sense. They don't give you any money or they don't pay you hourly or something, but they give you the experience and the knowledge that will help you. So for example, SHAD, you have to pay to go for most people. But in doing so, you're learning so much so that even if you aren't getting paid by the hour or working a job necessarily, it's still really valuable and it helps your application as well.
I agree. I just wanted to add I think that's like a really good thing, like approach to look at organizations that will pay you an experience. But if you're someone who doesn't have that privilege, it's totally fine because one time a university student who worked on like the admissions team told me that, you know, kids who show that they've been working like a minimum wage job at like, let's say McDonald's for the past 2 or 3 years in high school, when we compare them to a kid who did like a 2-year-long science program that they paid for, no one has an advantage because in one sense, like this kid, like Daniel said, was paid by experience, but on the other sense, like the other kid who's working that job, obviously we know like, you know, working a minimum wage job isn't the most luxurious thing and maybe not every teenager's dream about how they want to spend their free time, but it shows that they have like that financial responsibility and most likely they're either like saving up or supporting their family, and that adds just as much character or just as much value to your character as like doing some prestigious program. So definitely don't feel like you're limited or don't feel like you have to find like a big name organization to work for. And if you know you have to work and make money, just know that that is to your advantage and don't ever feel like you're missing out on other opportunities.
Okay, something to add. It's I tried to apply to company jobs like McDonald's or other things. But then for me, at least, it didn't really work out because at the time I was too young or I was like kind of not satisfied. So for me, at least, I feel like you should focus on the learning and focus on the growing when you're trying to find employment. So, but if you really need like the finance, then of course that's definitely all right as well, like Sana said. But for me, at least, I found that entrepreneurship worked better for me because I believe that you grow more if you're in a very uncomfortable situation and then you later kind of learn how to deal with that because eventually you're gonna come face to face with like super uncomfortable situations. So like employment with a company just seems like maybe too comfortable for me. So I initially I didn't really do that. Also, a lack of accessibility, and so I definitely learned a lot, like trying to like teach music, like advertising, marketing, and things like that. But yeah, I guess what I wanted to say is just have a goal in mind. Like, what are you trying to get out of this employment, and what do you want to like learn?
Yeah, and just to add one last thing is like, um, if you want, it's always great to maybe if you this is something that I know a lot of kids do, like perhaps do some smaller things during their time in high school, and then in the summer before university they search employment. And when you are looking for employment or for a position, like don't be scared. Like that is the number one thing. Like just even if you feel like you're underqualified, even if you think you have a 0.001% chance, just apply. There's no harm in it because the worst that can happen is, oh, you aren't accepted, but that's okay because you learn from that. Like me personally, like I'm starting to work at a technology company in Vancouver, and like when I apply, it's like you don't think that you're going to get the position necessarily, but you never know. And someone that a senior that is told me this is like you don't need to have all the qualifications to get a job. Like you can just apply, and worst comes to worst, you get rejected, but it's okay. You just learn from that and move forward. And so don't be as scared to apply for something. And that doesn't just apply for jobs, like that applies for universities, scholarships, and everything. Like obviously don't do it to the point where it's too time consuming, and be realistic with yourself. But at the same time, like just try it because you never know what can happen.
Are there any additional input for this question? Okay, sounds good. Due to time constraints, we will have to end the seminar here. Thank you to all the speakers that joined us today and shared the information, and thank you to everyone that participated in our seminar. Thank you. And there's a forms in the chat. It's like a feedback form. Please fill it out.